So hey everybody, this is Erin, and we are going to do a ink test lab. So I've been working with Brutus Monroe for a little while, and he has these amazing chalk inks that do just about a little bit of everything. They kind of act like a distress, they act like a chalk ink, they act like a Staz-on, and I wanted to run them through kind of the normal things that stampers want to do with stamps to see if they really are an all-in-one stamp. Brutus Monroe sells their inks, and these are the little mini ones, and they come in a set. This is the winter set. There's also summer, fall, and spring, so take a look. Now, we are going to test this doing all kinds of stuff, stamping on plain paper, stamping on glossy paper, watercoloring with them, doing a whole bunch of things. It's going to be a series of videos. Brutus Monroe has graciously let me do a giveaway to 4 people, each receiving one set of the different colors. So somebody's going to get fall, somebody's going to get spring, somebody's going to get summer, and somebody's going to get winter. My giveaway is if I hit 1,500 subscribers, so 1,500. I'm a little over 1,000 at this moment when this video is going to go live. And all you need to do to enter into the video, and I'll explain again at the end, is to leave a comment at the bottom of this post or at the bottom of this video and any other chalk series video that I'm going to do, and you have a chance to win. So just make sure you subscribe and leave a comment that you're interested in winning the prize. We are also doing a 20% off of any chalk ink or re-inker for quite a bit. It's 20% off any of the Brutus Monroe inks, chalk inks, anything that says chalk ink on it, and all you need is coupon code ERINREED, ERINREED. That's it, super simple. So if you go in, just make sure you put the coupon code and you can get credit for 20% off your chalk inks. So let's start playing. I have picked out a series of inks just to kind of compare. So we are going to do a comparison of like colors. I was trying to do all red, but I do not have a Colorbox red, and I do not have a Staz-on red, so I went with the closest color I had, which was orange. So we are going to compare the red or wagon color of Brutus Monroe. I also have a Dare to Be Artsy, and this is just one that I got from somebody, and I thought I'd kind of play and see what the difference was. These little chalk inks that you get at Joann's and Michael's, and they're in the $1 or $1.50 bins, and so I thought I'd play because it says chalk ink, and I want to see what the difference is. We also have the chalk ink from Colorbox, little cat size. We have 2 Prima chalk inks. One of them is a quick dry fluid chalk ink, and the other one is a resist chalk edger. We also have the distress ink from Tim Holtz, and then we have the Staz-on ink in pumpkin or orange. And they're all in the orange-red realm. We are going to compare it to the same stamp, and this is the cutest little stamp. This is the January Stamp Club stamp from Brutus Monroe, and the deal with the stamp club is that you subscribe and it's $5 a month, and you get a cute little stamp in the mail. It includes shipping for $5. Everything is included. It just shows up at your door. It's fantastic. Plus you get a discount at Brutus Monroe anytime you shop for being a stamp club member. Can't beat that. So this one is all about champagne and a little champagne bottle. How adorable. So we are going to play with that, and between each of my ink stamps on the paper, I'm going to label it, and then we are going to use the Squeaky Clean stamp cleaner, which is pretty fun. And so what I've done is I'm going to spray this on here just a little bit, and between each stamp I'm going to wipe this down and then pat it dry so I'm not contaminating one ink to the other. So we are going to start with the Brutus Monroe. We'll do that as our number 1 each time. And just for consistency's sake, I am going to be doing the same ink. I'm going to pretty much try and pat it the same amount of time. Whoops. I'm going to stamp it, and immediately after I pick it up, I'm going to rub it and see what happens when I rub my finger on the stamp. This one seems to be holding true, and that's awesome. And I'm going to write Brutus Monroe right below that, so I remember which one is which. I'm going to clean my stamp, and keep in mind a brand new acrylic stamp may have a little bit of a residue left over, because it's going to kind of stain your stamp just a tiny bit. It's not bad, but it will get it clean. It just may leave an imprint or kind of like season your stamp, and that's it. So it's just a way to clean it. I'm going to continue doing these for all of the other stamps, labeling and testing it, but I'm going to speed this up a tiny bit. So unfortunately, my little fingerprints kind of got everywhere, and I don't have nice, clean, crisp images bleeding around, but the actual images work just fine. Okay, so let's take a look. Here's our Brutus Monroe. For every single one of these, after they stamped, I took my finger and I rubbed it, and I tried to make sure I was picking a finger. Every single one of these held true and did not smear except for the Prima Resist ink. As soon as I stamped it in, I can see little streaks. It's not super obvious, but it does streak a little bit. And then here, this is another one that kind of streaked just a tiny bit. The Dare to Be Artsy also streaked just a tiny little bit, but all the other ones did just fine. I was kind of thinking that this one might do it, but it didn't. This one did a tiny bit. But the Brutus Monroe, the Ranger, the Staz-on, and the Colorbox did not smear at all. But these 4 did. Usually Staz-on ink is a much crisper image, probably closer to one of these two, but my ink pad's kind of old and I do not have a re-inker. So it's going to be a little bit faded, but it'll still have all the same properties of a regular Staz-on ink. So this is not a true crisp image like it should be. So that's the only difference. All the other ones, the ink pads are nice and juicy and they're great. It's just, that's the only one that's a little bit not. Okay, so next step, what are we going to do? We are going to compare how these all get treated if you went through and you added watercolor on top of it with their own same ink. Does the same ink watercolor, but we're going to do a different color for each of them. So what we are going to do is we are going to take a contrasting color, and I picked out a whole bunch here, and it's kind of whatever I had on hand that also was in the same line of colors. So I picked anything from purples and blues and greens because it would show up against the red and orange. Opposite colors on the color wheel. The only one I don't have an opposite color because I only have 2 forms of Staz-on is I only had black, but you'll see why it really doesn't matter here in a minute. Okay, so what we are going to do, this is the same distress craft mat that Tim Holtz uses for all of his distress inks, but you can use it with a multitude of different things. So that's what we're going to use, and we're going to compare that technique of his distress inks with all of these other ink pads. So what you do is you take your ink, you do a couple of blots on here, you take a little bit of plain old water, and you missed it, and then you take a paintbrush. You could take a water pen as well, and you're going to pull the ink off the mat to make a watercolor. And you can do it in whatever color ink that you happen to have. This is a distress ink technique, but we're going to see how well they work with all the other brands on the same ink that we've already used. And then we're just going to wash it. So for the watercolor technique, what I'm looking for is 3 things. 1, does it pick up the ink quality really well when you spray it with the water? Does it look like it's a watercolor on my mat? Number 2, does it transfer the water, does it transfer the color really well to the paper? Number 3, does it bleed with the ink or reactivate the ink that's below it? And that's how it determines whether or not it's a good watercolor ink or a good watercolor ink is the bottom line. So I'm going to do the same thing for the other ones. I'm going to clean my brush in between. I'm going to take the ink pad with the same ink that I used, so Ranger Distress, same ink, dab it a couple of times on here, spray it with the water, activate it with my brush. So this one, again, it looks like it's really good watercolor right here. I mean, this is part of the thing that this ink does. And then I'm going to paint with it on the paper. I can see the color quite clearly, and it is blending just a tiny bit. Not too bad, but it is pulling up other color. It's reactivating the color underneath. And that is one of the good things but bad things with the Ranger ink. So I'm going to do the same thing with all the other ones, continuing to do all the way down the line. So here we go. So taking a look, pretty much every color except for the Staz-on pulled the color and made look like a watercolor on my mat. It blended with the water and it did what it was supposed to do. But only some of them transferred really well to the paper. So in terms of colors that transferred well, and I didn't pick super light colors. I try to pick nice dark colors or bright colors or colors that were kind of in the same tone of range. I mean, even this is a Shabby Shutters. This is a light one, but it transferred wonderfully. Staz-on is not used for this at all. I would say the Dare to Be Artsy, it even blended with the ink that was already there. It kind of reactivated it and muddied it, and it went from being a blue into like a purpley color. The chalk inks, again, it didn't transfer very well, and I had to feel like I had to apply a lot of water to get that dark color. These ones are okay. The color blocks worked okay, but it felt like it also kind of covered up a little bit of my stamp. But if that's the look you're going for, that kind of, you know, ethereal watercolor effect, it would work wonderfully. The quick dry, it did okay. I did pick a little bit of a cooler color, so that's why, but it didn't transfer the color that was on here. I don't feel like it fully transferred the color that well. I'm kind of laying the color next to it, and you can tell that the color is not exactly the same when it got transferred. It kind of muddied a little bit, and so that's something to kind of keep in mind. So I'm transferring. There is a difference in color. It's not as dark and crisp a color from when you start. And this is quite a faint color too, so I got to keep that in mind. So this is how they started, straight from the ink pad. This is just black, and then the Dare to Be Artsy is right here. All in all, the ones that I think I would use to do this, the Distress ink, the Brutus Monroe, I think the color blocks did okay. If I was in a pinch and I only had that particular color, I think these ones would also do as well. This one kind of blended, these ones blended with the color that were there, and Staz-on just doesn't work. Alright, we're now going to go in with some glossy paper. This is the back side of some paper I've already used. This is from Canvas Core, and it does have a little bit of a glossy feel, a typical glossy paper, because sometimes you just need a glossy paper for something. And we're going to test how, and I'm sorry about the spots, it's the back side of an old scratch paper. We're going to test how all of the same inks, including the Brutus Monroe, and make sure my stamp is nice and clean before I get started. And clean off any of the old. It's getting kind of seasoned with all the fun colors we're using here. And we're going to do the same thing as before, but because it's glossy and I want to make sure that all of these have the same kind of effect or feel, we are going to stamp. And we're going to kind of let it dry for just a couple seconds, because some of these other stamps also require a teeny bitty bit of drying time before they're actually set on. So we're going to just give them a couple seconds. And we're going to do the same order that we did last time. So the next one's going to be the Ranger. Alright, so just gave it a couple seconds of drying time, and I'm going to lightly take my finger, and it is pretty much set on there. If I went in with a heat gun, it would set it even faster, but I just wanted to let it air dry, and on a glossy paper, it's done pretty darn good. Okay, so let's test our Distress ink. Same method. Ink up our stamp, now that we've cleaned it. Go ahead and stamp it. Clean my stamp. Give the same amount of drying time to both inks. I don't want to change that up. I'm just going to write Ranger on this one this time. Give it a second. We're going to do the Staz-on next. Just to give it a couple more seconds, I'm going to go ahead and ink up my next one and stamp it. So it'll give it enough drying time. I should have done that with the last one. I kind of waited around for a bit. I'm going to stamp it, clean it, and then I'm going to test the previous one to see how it did. Cover my ink. Staz-on, and then I'm going to test this guy and see. I gave it probably even more drying time than this guy, and it's smearing quite a bit. I'm going to do the same thing with the Staz-on. Give it a second, go to the next ink, which is the Dare to Be Artsy. I think we're already clean, just to make sure. And I'm going to continue doing this down the line, same order I did with the other ones. It's just easy to do it that way. All right, I'm trying to give this one as much drying time as I've given the other ones, and let's go ahead and test to see where we're at. All right, so Brutus Monroe smeared a teeny bit of a second. If you'd given it a little bit longer, it probably would have been fine. The Ranger, it's pretty much dry, and even at this point, you can really, I'm really rubbing my finger and it's not smearing anymore. So these ones have had more drying time now. Now it's set, it's not going anywhere. Staz-on, same thing. I think I had something on my finger, which is why it kind of smeared, because it's not the orange, it's kind of a reddish color. So don't keep that in mind when you're testing this one. We'll go back and do this one right now, just because it's about the same amount of drying time. We'll come back and talk about each of these. So Staz-on, first three worked great. The Dare to be Artsy, also great color there. This Dollar Spot chalk inks, it smeared with the same amount of time, but now it's really not going anywhere. It's kind of staying on. Colorbox did a great job of staying on the paper. It's not resisting, it's not smearing at all, so that's awesome. Both the Prima, and it's still doing it. It is not sticking to the glossy paper. It is completely just smearing away. And the Resist ink also, even after this amount of time, it is smearing. So these ones are not good on glossy paper at all. The chalk ink, not so much, but the other ones did a fantastic job. All right, on this next video, next section, we're going to test all of our inks still on our glossy paper, and I went through and I added a second stamp next to each of them. A lot of us like to stamp and then color in our image, and we'd like to use a pen, various type of brush pens or other kinds of markers to color them in. So I picked out 4, which in my mind are kind of the 4 most common, at least what I have on hand, brushes that you're going to use, marker type. We have the Faber-Castell Pitt Artist Big Brush Pen, and I tried to pick all colors that were kind of light so we could see through. So they're all yellows, and the closest I had in this one was kind of a greeny color. So this is the Faber-Castell, and it's again in a yellow. We have a Copic marker, your Copic sketch marker, again it's in a yellow. We have the Tombow Dual Brush Pen, again in a yellow, and then we have the Spectrum Noir pen. Again, this is kind of in a light green yellowy color. What we're going to do is we're going to do a wash on all of these. I'm not going to try and do any detail marks work. I'm just going to do, and this is why I have 2 cups, because the top of the cup I'm going to do in one pen and the bottom in another. And in the cup, since we have 4 pens, we have tops and bottoms for both. We're going to pick the big top part, and we're going to do this on the top of all of them. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of wash over. And what am I looking for? Is it blending with the color that's below it? So is it picking up the ink color and blending and making a muddy mess? If not, then this is a good pen to work with this particular ink. And we're going to go through and do all of them. So the top side is going to be the Spectrum Noir. The bottom side we're going to do with the Tombow. And it's not picking up our ink. It's not blending. Otherwise we would see this kind of orangey color happening. Here is the Copic marker. We're going to do the same thing again. And it's doing a fantastic job. And then we have the Faber-Castell Big Pitt Brush Pen, and those ones all held up phenomenally. I'm going to do the same thing in the same order: the Spectrum with the Tombow below, then the Copic with the Faber-Castell below that on all of our ink colors. Same exact process. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and do all of the Spectrum Noir all the way across, and then I'm going to do all of the next pens and speed this up for you. All right, so let's test it out. Now, some of these kind of surprised me. I was a little bit like, I wonder why I did that. For all 4 of these colors, the Brutus Monroe held true. I even went back and I did a couple of times, and I really kind of put it through its gears and really pushed hard on some of these colors, because I was I'm pushing to see if the color is going anywhere. I'm not, you know, being light about it. I'm really kind of damaging my pens a little bit just to kind of test this. And it is doing a phenomenal job of maintaining a nice, clean, crisp image underneath all the pens that I'm doing. The Ranger did a really good job too. It kept its image really well. I blended just as hard on these, and it is holding steadfast and true. This is what shocked me, the Staz-on. Again, my ink is starting to kind of fade, so that's why it's not as clean and crisp an image. It should be just as dark as these guys, but again, it's an orange, so it's kind of blending with the yellows that I'm using. But with the Faber-Castell, it completely pulled the color right off. It didn't make it stick to the paper, which I thought was kind of weird. It completely lifted the stamp, and it's no longer there. Like, it's not that the color is not there, it's just that the stamp is not there. It's gone. The Dare to Be Artsy did fantastic with all four. The chalk ink, the cheapy chalk ink from the stores, it pulled the color off of almost all of them. I can no longer see the image that's there any longer. It's a little bit on the top here, but not much. The Colorbox held true with all colors, again, me scratching it. And both Prima inks completely lost their images with all four colors. There's a hint of an image left here, but with the Tombow pen, it completely lifted it off. It's gone. It's no longer there. And you can see how crisp an image it started off being, and look how muddied it looks, or it's almost completely faded through. I would not want to color with these because my image would be lost. Any of these ones on top, with the exception of the Faber-Castell Big Brush, I would use any of these or the Colorbox if I was blending with any type of these pens. So, good to know. If you're gonna color in images with pens, do not use the Primas or the cheapy chalk inks. And Staz-on, for some reason, I cannot get it to stick with the Faber-Castell, but all the other ones work great. All right, so this is end of video 1. In our testing of our inks, we tested it on regular scrapbook paper. And this is just a regular old scrapbook paper, nothing fancy, that's good heavy duty cardstock. We tested it and we did a whitewash of it. We tested it versus, you know, how clean and crisp of an image, does it bleed when you stamp on it? And so this is where this one came from. Then we tested it on a glossy cardstock on how well it's smeared or not smeared. And then we tested it versus some brushes. We will have some other videos coming up probably next week, next Thursday. There will be another one going live, and we're going to test it on different surfaces and see how well it takes on burlap and things like that. So thanks for stopping by. Do not forget about the giveaway. All you need to do is comment in the bottom that you are interested in a giveaway and getting some Brutus Monroe inks. We are giving away 4 sets of packs. There's going to be 4 winners. You just have to say your name and subscribe to my channel, and as soon as I hit 1,500, we will do our drawing and it'll get shipped out to you, whoever the winners are. So that's it. And don't forget about the coupon code for the Brutus Monroe inks. At 20% off, coupon code Erin Reed, all lowercase, one word, ERINREED. Easy, easy. Thanks for stopping by. Bye-bye.